Well, after years of drawing very little attention, the persecution of Christians in Nigeria has been getting increased and notable attention over the past few weeks, as well as some action. Now, this is something, as I chaired the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, we were successful in the previous Trump administration of getting then Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to declare Nigeria a country of particular concern. Well, the Biden administration, as soon as they came in, removed that designation and were dismissive, frankly, in my meetings with the administration officials. Well, President Trump has declared once again Nigeria a country of particular concern, and that has put some wheels in motion. Yesterday on Capitol Hill, there was a joint congressional briefing on Nigeria that brought together members of the House Appropriations Committee and Foreign Affairs Committee alongside religious freedom experts. This, again, was at the direction of President Trump, whose recent statements on Nigeria has given a lift to the plight of Christians in this West African country. And just today, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced that the State Department will restrict U.S. visas for those who knowingly direct, authorize, and fund, support, or carry out violations of religious freedom. He made it a point to note that the visa policy applies to Nigeria and other governments or individuals that persecute people for their religious beliefs. So with Nigeria now in the spotlight, could this be a turning point for the situation there and, quite frankly, for religious freedom internationally? With me now in studio to discuss this, Travis Weber, Vice President for Policy and Government Affairs at the Family Research Council, and Brad Brandon, founder and CEO of Across Nigeria. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Good to be on with you.
So, Brad, let me start with you. Today, you were a part of an event at the Museum of the Bible with the National Religious Broadcasters. What's the latest? Is there a sense that this attention is having an effect?
Yeah, absolutely. The attention that's happening here in the United States is something that many Nigerians have been waiting for and asking for. Their government has been non-responsive of this issue of targeting Christians in northern Nigeria. So to get the United States government involved, members of Congress involved, to see the media starting to talk about it, from Bill Maher to Nicki Minaj to President Trump, all of these people drawing attention to it, it's a welcome change for Nigerians who are suffering under this persecution.
I said it was today. The panel is tomorrow. When you look at what the Nigerian government is doing, I mean, this is critical because it's the most populous nation in the African continent. This could become a humanitarian crisis very quickly. Travis, we've seen more attention given to Congress, by Congress to this, but there were some early adopters. Chris Smith, congressman from New Jersey, has been on this from forever. In fact, all the way back to having Boko Haram designated as a terrorist organization. They have to be grateful that we're seeing the administration now lean in.
No, absolutely, right. So, as you mentioned, Chris Smith, focused on this for a while, and there have been some in the religious freedom community who've been focusing on this issue. But with President Trump's post, that has galvanized the U.S. government. There's more members speaking out about this now, the House and Senate. And Tony, I actually believe this momentum on religious freedom, if we continue the Secretary of State's post about the visa, because the importance of that is it focuses on religious freedom. So it gets governments on notice. Religious freedom violators could be restricted from coming here, which they don't want to be. Whether it's India, it doesn't matter what country it is, right? So we have to now take a look elsewhere, moving from Nigeria, as we look at the Nigeria CPC situation and say, what will the Nigerian government have to agree to? What steps should they have to take to assure the U.S. government that they are protecting religious freedom? Right. And we should give them we need a track record. We can't just have promises. We need a track record, a point you've made about Syria, in order to lift the restrictions.
Well, Brad, one of the things that we had about 2-3 months ago, there was a subcommittee hearing in which I testified, and we had religious leaders from Nigeria that testified about the threat to Christians, and they were targeted when they went home. By the government were making critical statements saying this doesn't exist, doesn't happen. Are they changing their tune?
No. The Nigerian government is outright denying that there's any kind of genocide or targeted persecution against Christians.
Why?
And really what they're saying is they're saying that it's It's equal opportunity violence in northern Nigeria, which is absolutely not true. They'll cite Muslim on Muslim violence, but the Muslim on Muslim violence that's happening in northern Nigeria is radical Islam, Boko Haram and ISWA, targeting Muslims that don't hold their radical beliefs. Christians are inordinately targeted, almost 5 times more likely to be
most
killed
dangerous
than Muslims.
place in the world
Absolutely.
to be a Christian.
50,000 Christians since 2009. 70% of all the Christians killed around the world are killed in northern Nigeria. I've stood at the mass graves of friends of mine who've been buried many, many times, scores of mass graves where 20, 30 people are buried in these graves. I've never stood at a Muslim mass grave.
Former Secretary Blinken, when he was in and removed the designation, I met with him as chair of USERF, and their line was, this is climate change. This is scarcity of resources, and so you have the herders coming in and overrunning the farmers.
Some of that is true. Absolutely. There is an issue of, I would say, more climate smart issues, meaning just seasonal climate change.
But do you go in and kill people to take their land? I mean, is that normal?
No, but I think when you're dealing in a region where the resources are so scarce, you're doing anything that you can to survive. There certainly are radicalized Fulani Muslims. Those are the herders. But by and large, we work closely with the Fulani communities. I work and embed myself in those communities. I speak their language. I live with them. I would say that most of them don't want the violence. Most of them want peace. But there are radical
I want to, Brad,
doubt.
we're up against a break. When we come back, I want to talk about the role of Boko Haram and where their funding is coming from. Now, Brad, as we were going into the break, I wanted to ask you, during my time at USERF in the probing and conversations that we had, is that the Boko Haram is better equipped with weapons, technology than the government itself.
Yeah, absolutely. 3 years ago, when I was in northern Nigeria, there was orders for the military to go in and control a region that Boko Haram had taken over. The soldiers walked off the job, said this is a suicide mission. They're better equipped. They have more guns, more people, more soldiers than we do.
Where is that coming from?
Most of that is coming from individual donors, large companies out of Turkey, as you mentioned before, also Saudi Arabia, and even Qatar. Qatar has done this as well before. There have been several Qataris who have been arrested because they've been supplying weapons and funds to Boko Haram directly.
Designed to destabilize Nigeria.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The whole thing is designed to keep northern Nigeria destabilized because it allows the terrorism to happen. It allows control. It allows all of these things. It's the Wild West.
Right.
There's no control there.
So, Travis, how important is Nigeria in the overall conversation about international religious freedom?
I think it's extremely important because, as you mentioned, it's the most populated country, largest country in Africa. And so, as put one way, the way Nigeria goes, the way we might see others in Africa go. So if you kind of look broadly speaking at Africa, you got an Islamic north, a Christian south, and the pressure of the Islamic north coming south is a dynamic that is at play in many countries, right? And Tony, you'll remember the hearing you testified at, the focus really was on security, accountability. Even, it was bipartisan. On that subcommittee, the members of Congress agreed with the notion that the Nigerian government needed to bring justice to where there was injustice. That will stabilize the region. It will allow things to settle down. And if we can do that in Nigeria, that can be a model for elsewhere for the good. We certainly don't want Nigeria destabilized and it's spreading elsewhere, but it's kind of a indicator of where we might see things go in Africa. Thankfully, President Trump's CPC designation has brought attention to the issue. I think now we need to bring this, you've talked about Sudan, we need to bring that focus to Sudan, DRC, and elsewhere where there are attacks on Christian communities that's going to further destabilize the region if they're not dealt with as a matter of justice and law and order.
So, Brad, let me ask you this question. With the attention, obviously, it's like somebody yelling and everybody turns around and looks for a moment. So the world's kind of looking right now, certainly here in the United States, Washington, D.C. is looking at Nigeria. What needs to be done practically? Let's start from this standpoint. What can individual Christians do? What can we do in the Christian community here in the United States? Because as the writer of Hebrews says, we're to not just sympathize, but empathize with those who are being persecuted. What can we do individually, and what should we be doing as a nation? What can we do to help?
I think, as you mentioned, as far as the church goes, Hebrews 13 is a perfect example of that. Paul says to bind ourselves in so much that it's as though it's happening to us. So we're supposed to bind ourselves so closely to them that it's not something that's happening to somebody far, far away and that's a horrible thing. No, it's something that's happening to our brothers and sisters in Christ, and we hold it that close. That draws us to pray for them. That draws us to raise awareness of what's happening. As far as the United States goes, I think we're on the right track in what we're doing and what President Trump wants to do. Military intervention could possibly be needed when it comes to Boko Haram and ISWA to hold them back and bring stability to the region. But I also think we need to raise the socioeconomic issues that are driving a lot of people to Boko Haram. A lot of the young folks are being driven into Boko Haram because of the socioeconomic issues.
So it's a great point, Brad, because it is that where we have religious freedom in the world, we have economic growth and social stability. So as they try to eradicate Christianity, it only becomes a vortex of evil and of despair.
Yeah.
And so it's always to our interest to see vibrant religious freedom being protected around the world. Of course, we have to practice it here at home if we're going to preach it abroad.
Right.
So, but before we run out of time, how can folks find out more about what you're doing in Nigeria?
Yeah, they can go to acrossnigeria.org. Acrossnigeria.org is our website. We help persecuted Christians, and we bring the gospel to the region. We think that the gospel is the solution to this whole problem. So our focus is to bring the gospel of Jesus Christ into northern Nigeria.
And you have folks on the ground doing that?
We absolutely do, and I'm on the ground most of the year.
And you're helping those that are being targeted and persecuted?
That's right. Yeah.
Give that website again?
Yeah, acrossnigeria.org is the website.
And how can folks be praying for you?
Please pray for us, just that God would give us strength to do what we do, the wisdom to do what we do, and discernment to do what we do. Safety is of the Lord, but God gives us the wisdom and strength that we need to do it. So
now, you're going to be at the Museum of the Bible tomorrow. How can people find out a little bit more about that? We've got a little less than a minute left.
Yeah, they can go to WashingtonPolicyInstitute.org. So just go to WashingtonPolicyInstitute.org. On their website are ways to get tickets and all of the itinerary for the day and the events. And it's going to be a great event, raising awareness about persecution not only in Nigeria but around the world.
Right. And that it is a problem around the world. And Travis, I know that, as you said, this is a moment in which we can draw attention to the persecuted church, and as Brad said, we need to be praying and standing with them.
Yeah, and Tony, I'm so thankful to the U.S. government and Trump administration for calling attention to this, because you think about if the United States does not address this right now globally, who will?
Yeah. Again, we've got to practice and promote here at home what we're going to preach abroad. Brad, Travis, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Tony.